I tend to do is I cut it up into little bits and put it in the freezer. And I put it in the freezer. And then if I'm making like pizza or if I need peppers for any dish, like a stir fry dish, I can just take the pieces out that I need and I can use it up. So it lasts obviously much longer in the freezer form versus in the fridge. And you can do this with berries. Like berries can get really, really expensive too. But during the summer, when you can get strawberries, fresh strawberries in like June at a really great price, just wash them, put it on a tray, and then you can freeze it and have beautiful, fresh Ontario berries in like December. And then veggie wise, we also have some spinach. But again, it's up to you, whatever you want. I have some salt and pepper here. And then we also have coconut milk, which is just your traditional coconut milk in a can. And then for tools wise, again, you'll need knife, cutting board, a peeler for your carrot if you wanted to peel your carrot. And I have some spoons, which I'll show you what we'll use that for. So first things first.
But Anna has two and I said what?
So first things first, I'm gonna dump out my red peppers onto my cutting board, and I'll just move everything off to the side so you guys can see. You should also be able to see two screen, like a close up of the cutting board and then my full body. So with any pepper, it doesn't even matter if it's like jalapeno peppers and it's just a little bit spicy. Just be very careful about touching them and then touching your face afterwards. We don't want your eyes stinging or your nose stinging. So just be careful. If you're really sensitive, if you have sensitive skin, you can even wear gloves. Or sometimes what I like to do in case I forget, I take like a pair of tongs in one hand and then I just like don't touch it. So then I cut off the tops on all of my peppers. And if you're using a food processor, you don't really need to worry about how big the pieces are because it'll kind of get taken care of with the food processor. It will chop it up really nicely. I'm going to be using the mortar and pestle today. So I'm going to just chop up my ingredients, these peppers, a little bit smaller. So it's just easier to do. And the spiciness from any peppers actually come from the little membranes that the seeds are stuck to. So that's why sometimes you hear people saying, oh, it's the seeds, so take out the seeds, but it's actually more of the membrane. So these guys are super tiny, so it's very hard to take the membrane and the seeds out. But in a larger pepper, if you find that it's a little bit spicy, you can try to take some of that membrane and seed out, and it will reduce the heat quite a bit. And there's also a green version of this chili. So I highly encourage you to find some green spicy peppers that you like, and you can just swap it out. You can pretty much use the same ingredient and play around with the flavoring. The beauty of making this paste yourself versus, I mean, you can easily get like red curry paste from an Asian grocery store or even just like any grocery store now. But the beauty of it being made yourself is that you can really play around with how much of everything you want. So an example would be, you know, some people like it a lot tangier, so they can technically add a little bit more of the lime and kind of kick that up a bit. So in our mortar pestle or our food processor, whatever you're using, we have the chilies cut up in there. A tip with the lime, if you're using fresh lime, is to just roll it. If you roll it, the juice really kind of releases. Another option is if you have like a really teeny tiny lime and rolling it, you're not feeling that difference in softness, you can pop it into the microwave for like 5-10 seconds and it will soften it up as well. And when you're using the zest, I washed this earlier, but just make sure you wash it as well. And we're gonna just grate a little bit of our lime zest in. And when we do stuff like this, we want to make sure that we don't grate all the way down to the flesh of the lime or lemon, whatever we're using, because that starts getting a little bit bitter. So do a little, and then what I like to do is check on it, and then I turn it, and then I do another section so that I'm only getting the green part. And if you don't have a little grater like this, I'll show you what you can do instead. You can just take your knife and carefully cut a little bit of the skin like so. And then you can just chop it up. And again, if you're using a food processor, you really don't even need to chop it up that much, but you can just chop it up like so into tiny pieces, and you can throw that into your food processor or mortar pestle. And then we are going to cut this lime in half. You can take a fork and just juice it right in, just scoop out any seeds that fall in. I like using this guy. So the proper way to actually put the lime with the flesh, the cut part down. And I know sometimes we think like we should put the lime in this way, but actually it doesn't juice as well. So if you try to put it the opposite way, this part will press down properly and actually squeeze more juice out of it. So we're gonna just give that a good squeeze. And again, you can adjust this afterwards. So if you like a little bit more lime in it afterwards, you can. So we'll just set that aside for now. And then we're also gonna be adding all of our dry ingredients. So we have our garlic powder. So this is 2 tablespoons of garlic powder that we're gonna put in here. We are gonna also put in our onion powder, which is 1 tablespoon. We also have our ginger powder, which is 1 tablespoon as well. And if you're putting this into your food processor, you can just dump it all in and blend it afterwards. Since I'm doing it with the mortar and pestle, I'm just gonna bash it up a little bit and just start incorporating the ingredients. So with the mortar and pestle, if you're using this guy, since there's lime juice in here and it's a little bit watery and we don't want to like smash it and get all of the hot pepper in our face, you want to just slowly mash the pepper. So what I'm doing is really, I'm just smushing everything down and breaking that pepper apart. And then what you'll start noticing is the color will start changing. It'll start giving that beautiful red color, but also the oils of the pepper will start releasing. Once you kind of smush all of the red peppers down, I like to start doing the motion of kind of like stirring it and putting pressure into it as well. And then we're gonna add some cumin and coriander as well. So cumin is gonna be 1/4 teaspoon. If you haven't had cumin before, just be cautious because the smell sometimes takes people by surprise. It's super tasty, but a little goes a long way. And then we're also going to be adding our coriander here, which is going to be 1/4 teaspoon. If you got the coriander seed instead of the coriander, ground coriander, it's fine because we're going to be pounding it up anyways. So it's all good. So we're going to just mix that together. And then lemongrass you'll find in Asian grocery stores most of the time. And it comes in these long green strands. And sometimes they're drier than other times. So this time mine is not as dry as I normally get it. But if you get it really, really dry and it's like really woody, either way, what you should do is you should take the back of your knife carefully here, and you want to just hit it a couple of times and bash it up. And this will release some of the flavors. And since I'm putting it into like a little container here, I'm just going to cut this guy up into smaller pieces. If you're putting it into your food processor, again, you don't need to do this part. I'm just going to throw these guys in. And again, lemongrass has a really beautiful, fragrant smell to it. If you haven't had it before and you're buying it for the first time, I would highly recommend that you take any kind of lemongrass that you have extra left over, do the same thing, bashing it, and you can actually marinate chicken with that, with a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of sesame oil, some salt and pepper, and it gives it that just nice touch of flavor. It's not too strong. So I'm just bashing this all up. So in here, just to recap, we have our 10 chili pepper, lime zest, lime juice, garlic powder, ginger powder, lemongrass, coriander, cumin, onion powder, and cilantro. I'm not putting cilantro in here today because I'm not a big fan of cilantro, so I'm skipping that part. But if you are a fan, go for it. And then once all the ingredients start coming together, if you just take a whiff, it smells delicious already. And then what you want to do is you want to continue to kind of bash it all up to the point where it gives you a paste. So at this point, you may need to add a little bit of water to kind of loosen it up. So I have some hot water here. You can use just room temperature water is fine. And we're going to just add a little bit in, but you want to make it almost a little bit of like a watery kind of paste. And if you're doing this in your food processor or blender, it will come together a lot quicker. I'm just going to quickly scoop some up to show you how it's looking. So you can kind of see, let me show you here. The ingredients are still kind of intact. I'm going to bash it up a little bit more, but it's this nice paste starting to form together. All of those beautiful flavors that we introduced are kind of meeting each other now and melting all nicely together. So once that's done, and you can add a little bit more water, less water, whatever consistency you like. Just remember, you don't want it to be too watery because we are going to introduce it with the rest of our ingredients, including the coconut milk, which will make it more of a sauce that way. So at this point, we're going to just set this guy aside for now, and we'll prep the other ingredients that we're going to use for the actual vegetable curry. So we'll start off with ginger and garlic, which is pretty much not only in a lot of Thai food because it gives it really beautiful aromatics, but in many Asian cuisine, we use ginger and garlic all the time too. And it's kind of up to you in terms of how much of these ingredients you want to add. So there's always a guide, you know, like 2 cloves of garlic, but if you kind of need to use your judgment a little bit too, because sometimes you get garlic and they're really teeny tiny and it doesn't give that much flavor. So I would say, like, you know, you can throw another clove in there, but some people really love garlic and they want more. So don't let me stop you. Go for it. At the more, the merrier. So I'm going to do one down. I'm going to do 2 cloves of garlic here. And the easiest way to cut garlic is to just give it a bash with your knife carefully. And simply the skin will fall off once you kind of break that apart. And then usually there's like a little end to your garlic that you want to cut off. And actually, if you're kind of playing around with garlic in the beginning of fall, you can actually take cloves of garlic and plant them into your garden. And then, you know, you wait a good couple of months, probably like July or so. Each individual clove of garlic will actually grow into a head of garlic, which is pretty cool. So you can kind of stretch that out, especially if you're buying like bulk garlic from Costco or something like that. And then you have some extra left over that you might not use right away. So we have 2 cloves of garlic. We're going to just chop it up roughly here. And then I'm going to just set this guy aside for now. And then with our ginger, you know, you buy like this big honking piece of ginger, and sometimes you might not use it all. I mean, if you cook a lot with ginger, maybe this is not, you know, that hard to finish up, but I find a lot of people find it hard to just buy a piece and then they use this little guy, then this goes to waste. So one tip is once you get it from the grocery store, take whatever piece you're going to use today, use it, and then give this guy a wash just so that you get some of the dirt and everything off of it, because this is a root that's grown in the ground too. So there'll be some dirt on it. Then take this piece, let it dry completely, and you can freeze it. So once you have it frozen, you can eat the skin too, but if it's frozen, so if we pretend this was frozen and you're using it for another recipe, you can simply take it out of your freezer and just grate it into whatever you're using, even making ginger tea, stuff like that. Then this will last like honestly forever in your freezer, and you probably don't have to buy ginger for quite some time, but it is way easier to save money to do it that way. So with ginger as well, normally I do peel the skin. If you don't want to, you don't have to, just wash it. But the easiest way to peel a ginger is actually with the spoon. And what you want to do is just take the piece of ginger and you want to just scrape off the skin. And if we see how much waste we have here, it's so like it's nothing. It's really just the peel coming off. And if you're like me and you like ginger tea, you can actually save all of that peel as well. And you can just put some hot water and you can definitely make yourself some nice fresh ginger tea, or even if you like chai. Like I really love chai, but sometimes I find the chai that you buy from the store doesn't really have a strong ginger spiciness to it. So I like to add my own. So we're going to just peel this guy here. And then you can either chop it up, or you can do what we did with the grater with the lime zest. And what we will do is take this guy again with our ginger. And the beauty of this, doing it on the grater, is that all that stringy bit that we don't really like eating and chewing on will remain on this piece, and only the juicy and the flesh of the ginger will get removed. So ginger does add a little bit of heat to this dish as well, but it adds a lot of beautiful flavor. So depending on how much you love ginger, how spicy, maybe you want to give it an extra kick, you can definitely add more. So I'm just scraping it off the grater, putting it with my garlic here as well. And then we are going to just peel our carrot. So if you have different colored carrots, you can definitely use it. This dish is nice to add colorful vegetables, because with that red color with the Thai chili, it's nice to introduce other complementary colors to it. So I'm just going to peel it. Again, you can eat carrot peels. So if you don't want to peel it, you can simply give it a good scrub and use it. If you don't have a peeler, you can actually take a bunch of tin foil, just scrunch it up and rub it against the carrot, and it'll actually peel it off too, which is a fun little trick. And you can save all of these peels, the garlic peel, the ginger peel, carrot peel, freeze it again. And once you have a collection of these scraps, you can actually make vegetable stock with it. So instead of buying vegetable stock, you already have all of this stuff lying around. I like put it in a Ziploc bag and save it every time I cook vegetables. And then once I have enough of it, then I just throw it into a big pot with water. And then I have veggie stock for a while. So for this recipe, you can cut your carrot however you like, but I like to cut them into kind of like slanted little medallion shapes, just because there's no meat in this recipe. So I want the vegetables to be a good bite and nice and hearty. So if you are using chicken, even like fish, beef, pork in this recipe, what I would recommend is still cutting them into little pieces like this. Marinate it with a little bit of salt and pepper, just so that it's not really bland. And you can cook that ahead of time first, so that everything is cooked fully. Because once you kind of get all the ingredients ready to go, everything comes together really, really quickly. So you don't want the sauce to be overcooked and some of the liquid is evaporating, and you're still waiting for your meat to finish cooking. So I like to cook the meat ahead of time first, set it aside, and then add everything back together afterwards. Another great thing with meat is that you can also use, like if you go to Costco and get a rotisserie chicken, and you know how you always have like a little bit left afterwards, you can take it off and throw it in here for extra protein as well. Another thing is tofu works beautifully in this recipe because tofu is like a sponge, really, right? Like it kind of just soaks up this delicious sauce that we're making. So you can definitely do that. Tofu, you don't really need to cook really for that long anyway. So I like to get firm tofu so that it stays in that shape, cut it into cubes, and then throw it into here as well. And then we're also gonna use 1 onion. And like I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be a yellow onion. It can be whatever you have around. And everyone asks me, how do I cut onions without crying? I don't think there's like any magical solution to do that. Sometimes it's stronger than other times. I remember when I used to work in the restaurant, when we had to cut a lot of onions, we would like run into the freezer and like your tears just froze. So it like stopped you from crying for a little bit, but it was really hard to avoid still. So some people say to like submerge it in water and cut it underwater. Like, I don't really know how you can do that safely. So I wouldn't recommend that. But one tip that people do have that I think can work is make sure your knife is really, really sharp. So one thing, I mean, in general, you want your knife to be nice and sharp because that's going to be as safe for you and your family using it as much as possible. But if you're cutting your onion, nice and quickly with a sharp knife, then it's just less likely that you're going to have that opportunity to tear up over cutting your onion. So highly recommend you sharpen your knife as often as you need. And then coconut milk, have it open and ready to go. And spinach, if you put them in containers like this or the bags like this, it's already pre-washed for you. So you don't really need to do anything, which is great. And then I have some salt and pepper ready to go here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move my stove over so you can see. Are there any questions? And it doesn't have to be about this recipe. It can be about other recipes that you're making. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to heat up our pan to a medium high heat. So in many Asian cuisine back in the day, the cost of fuel was really expensive, right? So, braising wasn't really a thing. Cooking in an oven wasn't really a thing. So whenever you look at like Asian recipes, it's never really like braise over the stovetop for 6 hours. There's like no recipes like that because fuel was so expensive. That's why you see like, you go to a Chinese restaurant, you have a big wok with an open flame and it's extreme high heat because we want to cook things really, really quickly so that we don't waste the fuel. So it's very similar to a lot of other Asian cuisines that you'll see, especially in Thai cooking. Like there's a lot of that as well. And a lot of recipes in the Asian culture, I find, has to do with it became a thing because we wanted to use up the existing ingredients we had and we didn't want to waste it, which I think we can all relate to. We always have stuff kind of kicking around in our fridge and in our pantry. So this is a great recipe to kind of honor that, like go shop your fridge and freezer before you go to the grocery store. If you have these spices already around and you have vegetables, then you can easily make this dish again yourself at home. So I'm using a cast iron pan today, which is my personal favorite because it will last forever. There's no coating that will get rubbed away like a nonstick pan would, and then you have to rebuy it. Cast iron is fairly easy to handle once you get the hang of it. But I like to cook with it because it is very nice in terms of even heat distribution throughout this pan. And there's various sizes as well. And they even have like a wok too. So completely up to you, but I personally like this guy. I have some vegetable oil here. You can use canola oil, avocado oil is a great choice. But again, with that high heat that we're cooking with, we don't want to use something like olive oil in this case because it'll just start smoking and burning up. And the beautiful taste of olive oil will compete, not in a good way in this case, with all of these other flavors that we have. So we don't want to use something like olive oil. We want to use something neutral, plain tasting, so that we can capture these beautiful flavors that we're throwing in. So in the pan, we have some oil. I can feel that it's getting nice and hot now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add our garlic and our ginger. And If you're cooking along or you're going to cook afterwards, you want to make sure that the pan is hot enough so that once you put these ingredients in, it starts sizzling away and you start smelling that beautiful aroma. We're going to also add our onions and our carrots. I like to add the carrots in pretty much in the beginning because we want to make sure that it's nice and soft. So if you look at all of the vegetables that you're using, onions, you want to make sure it's not raw, so it doesn't give off that raw taste. That's why we're throwing it in now. But carrots is probably the hardest vegetable that we're using, and we don't really want raw carrots in the final dish. So that's why we're putting that in nice and early so that we can soften it up. And depending on how hot your stove is and how thinly you slice all of your ingredients, it'll take a couple of minutes for it to soften up. The goal is that your carrot is a little bit softer. It doesn't have to be mushy or anything when you touch it because we're still going to be adding other ingredients and cooking, but you want it to be a little bit softer. And the goal here is to also have your onions change a little bit in color. So it's starting to get a little bit more translucent and a little bit more yellow in color than it was originally. And if you're using a gas stove at home with a good pan that conducts the heat really well, it doesn't take that long to achieve that for sure. So let me move this out of the way. And then when you start cooking with that chili paste that we made, that's the curry paste, it will be very strong. So I would just warn you, don't stick your head over it because the beautiful aroma will just come up and you'll start coughing. So just be cautious about that. And then at this point, so my onions are kind of getting softer and I can see that they're changing colors a little bit. And then I just add my pepper. So I just have some red and green peppers here. You can use whatever color you have. So at this point in your fridge, if you have some frozen peas and carrots, if you have peas in general, kicking around broccoli, cauliflower, mushroom, any of those vegetables, kind of like just the last bit of it, you can add it in here as well. If you have also your cooked protein, you can throw it in here as well at this point. So that the ginger and the garlic and the vegetables are starting to kind of all hang out together and all of the flavors are trying to get introduced to each other. So now we're going to add some salt and pepper, but again, you can adjust this afterwards. You can use white pepper instead of black pepper. It's a different peppercorn, has slight different taste to it. So whatever your preference or whatever you have around is fine. And you can also add more at the end once you taste everything. And then have your coconut milk ready. So I have this guy opened already. I'm just gonna get the lid lifted up. And if you haven't used coconut milk before, you will see that it's separated in terms of there's like a liquid on the bottom and the solids are usually at the top. And you want to use both the solids and the liquid. Sometimes it's mixed better and it's already kind of like more milk-like. So depending on what brand you use, but it is completely normal if you open up a can and see that the solids are on the top and the liquid are on the bottom. It's totally fine to use it. You may also be able to find cans of coconut like solids, or they call it coconut cream, which is just the solid part and they don't put the liquid in. If you found just the coconut cream and you have that instead, you can still use it for sure, but you'll probably need to add some stock or liquid of some sort like water to just make it more of a sauce-like texture, but you can definitely still use it. So here we have our vegetable, everything is everything is turning a nice golden color. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to be adding 2 tablespoons of our paste. So again, like I said in the beginning, start off with the 2 tablespoons. But if you end up saying, hey, I really like it. I like it spicier. I like more paste. Then go for it. Add some more. And again, don't stick your face in the hot pan at this point. Once you add that paste in, you will start smelling that, like your whole house is going to smell beautiful. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add this can of coconut milk in here as well. And you still have your heat going at a nice flame. You want your coconut milk to kind of all get combined with the liquid and the solid. And you want to just make sure that you bring it up to a boil. So what the goal now is to have the paste that we made introduced to the coconut milk and all of the vegetables that we have in here. And you want it to kind of all boil together and create this beautiful dish. So it depends on how thick you like your curry. So if you like your curry, like the sauce, to be on the thicker side, you can let this cook down a little bit, let some of the extra liquid evaporate. If you like it a little bit more loose and more saucy, you can leave it as is. And if you like it really, really, really thick and you want to serve it with rice and you can like barely see the sauce, you can also add a little bit of cornstarch with water and it can thicken it up for you as well. So the nice part about making stuff like this yourself is you can really change it up to however you like it. So if you don't like the way that the restaurant makes it and you have nailed down, the taste, you can adjust the texture however you like. And coconut milk, if you don't finish using this can, you should be, if you're following the recipe, is 1 can. But if you're not using up the whole can, you can freeze coconut milk really nicely. Just make sure you mix everything together in the can, put it into an ice cube tray, and let it freeze, then pop it into a Ziploc bag again and just label it coconut milk, and you can use it for whatever recipe that needs it as well. Okay, so this is boiling nicely. And when you make red Thai chili at home or even green Thai chili at home, one thing to note is that the color is never going to be as bright as the one that you get in a restaurant, because most restaurants, Asian restaurant, Thai restaurant, use a lot of food coloring in their dishes. So like say in Chinese restaurants, like orange chicken or like Tao's chicken is really delicious, but then the color is like really bright, right? It's because they're using a little bit of food coloring in to enhance that color. Same thing with pad Thai in the Thai restaurant or this Thai chili dish. It's very red usually, but when you add only 2 tablespoons of your Thai chili paste into it, it won't like it does. It just will never be that red. So they use a little bit of food coloring, which if you like to, you're more than welcome to. I like to just stick with whatever is in here and it's good. So don't be surprised when you make it that it's not going to be bright, bright, bright red. And then at this point, I like to add a handful of spinach. So this is washed already. You can just throw it in. And we all know the joke, like you put this whole thing in and it shrinks to nothing, right? So you can turn off your heat if you're happy with the consistency of your sauce, and you can just stir the spinach in. And within a minute or so, everything will wilt down nicely. But this is a great way to kind of just finish up the last bunch of spinach that you might have. And it's already nice and wilted. And this is the perfect way to cook spinach, even if you want to add it to, like, let's say spaghetti sauce or something like that. You don't ever want to boil your spinach. And I know a lot of people end up not enjoying spinach because they think that it's too soggy. The color becomes like almost like a gray color, and people don't like that. So it's usually because people are overcooking it. They're either like boiling all of their spinach in water and it kind of loses all of their color, so it turns gray. It also loses all of its flavor because we're dumping that water out. So if you want to keep that beautiful bright green color and you want the spinach to still have a little bit of a bite to it, you always introduce it at the end when you're almost done cooking and just stir it in. The residual heat from whatever you're making will wilt it, and it will be this, like you can see the spinach here is still a nice, beautiful green color. And if we ate this, it has still a little bit, like the stalk still has a little bit of a crunch to it, and it's delicious still. So once you get to this point and you're happy with it, you can serve it with a little bit of rice, which I think is like the best way to have this dish. Just white jasmine rice or basmati rice, whatever white rice you like, top it up. Another option is if you have any kind of noodles kicking around. So like udon noodles, rice noodles, you can cook that according to the package instruction and throw this on as well. If you're doing more of a low carb and you don't want rice or noodles, you can also do spaghetti squash instead. You can do a zucchini noodles. Zucchini noodles work beautifully with this because zucchini, I find, really absorbs the flavor of whatever you put into it. So this works really, really nicely with it. And you can just eat it as is, no judgment. You don't need to top it up with anything. But if you do have any left over afterwards, let it cool down completely. And if you plan on eating it within the next few days anyway, then just put it in your fridge. It can last like 2-3 days in your fridge in an airtight container. But if you're like, I had enough of curry this week, I want to save it for, lunch in a month, cool it down completely, put it in an airtight container as well. Or you can do like a small Ziploc bag, put it in, label it, get the air out, and you can freeze it. So it's really nice to have this made now. If, maybe you're not too busy right now, you can make like 10 of these little baggies. Just put in vegetable red Thai curry on as the label. And then what I like to do is I like to squeeze all of the air out of these bags so that I can line them up in my freezer, like either flat like this, or even kind of like slot them in this way. And then when you're ready, you have a busy week and you're ready for a nice hot meal, just take one of that bag out of your freezer, or 2 bags, however many you need, and it will defrost in no time because it's not that much ingredients in it. But if you're in a big rush, you can also just dip it into some water and it'll defrost really quickly, and simply either microwave it, put it in a pot and just reheat it. And you can eat a really beautiful, easy, healthy meal within minutes because you made this ahead and frozen. Perfect. So I'm going to just show you guys this final dish, if you can see. So color is not super, super red, but I see the specks of the red chili in here. And the color of all of the other vegetables kind of gave it like an orangey yellow tone to it. And it smells beautiful in here. I wish you can all enjoy with me. But did we have any questions?
That's wonderful. Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate that. I think everyone here has appreciated it as well, because that's just, you've taught us so much. I mean, I didn't know how the proper way of squeezing a lime until you showed me.
You know what? Like, it's one of those things where you think like the lime just fits like this, so I'm going to squeeze it like that. But if you have one of these, give it a try, and you will see the difference for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely will. I want to see if are there any questions. If you're shy, you can always type them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself now. It's a pretty small group in here tonight, which is great because that can allow us to ask more direct questions. So please. And it's fine if it's, I mean, it's a good sign that there aren't questions because.
And if you think of questions later on, you can feel free to send it in, and I'll be happy to answer it at a later time. Sometimes people make it, and as they go, they might have a question afterwards too. So don't be shy. You can ask later. But yeah, like I just really love to share these tips as well as the recipe, so that, it's expensive to go grocery shopping now. So like every dollar really do count. So I hope you found that helpful.
Oh yeah, I personally really do. And that's another reason why I think this program is great, because we can kind of help out the community in a way of by providing the spices, which sometimes can add up. But
Yep.
I can say here, there is a question, and one of the question says, how many inches do you recommend for cast iron wok? Could you please show if you have it? So if you have it there, just to show how many
I
inches.
don't have, I don't have my wok nearby. I have to dig it out. But this one over here is just a cast iron pan, and probably I use this more than the wok just because I can cook other stuff in it. So like if you like eggs in the morning, like we use this quite often. And this pan, there's various sizes. So I can show you the various sizes because I'm obsessed with cast iron. So we have a lot. So we have, I'm not kidding when I said I'm obsessed, we have this little guy, which is great for like breakfast. I think this is a 7-inch cast iron pan, 7-8 inches. And it's not too heavy. So if you're making something quick like eggs or French toast, this is beautiful for it. Then we have this medium version, which I would guess is like 9 inches. Yeah, 9 inches for this guy. So it depends really how big your family is, how many people you're cooking for. And then this guy, I believe, is 12 inches. So there's various brands that you can get. Lodge is probably one of the most popular brands. So this guy is a Lodge, and the wok we have is a Lodge as well. But these two other small ones, someone was like throwing them in the garbage and it hurt me. So I grabbed them and restored them. A lot of people have cast iron. They give up on it because they don't really know how to take care of it. And then they end up just like chucking it. So Facebook Marketplace is also a great place to see if anyone's getting rid of them. But during Christmas, there's actually tons of sales. So like you can go to your local kitchen supply stores. I'm in Hamilton, and there's a couple of stores here that sell them. And I know during Christmas time, they usually have some sales on them. But Amazon, you can always find them as well. Honestly, there's always someone getting rid of it on Facebook Marketplace. So that's probably the best place to find it the most affordable. If you do go down that route and you end up getting a pan that's a little bit damaged when you first get it, what I would recommend is to just take some coarse salt, like the coarsest salt that you can find, and like a really good scrubby. And what you want to do is you want to just take that salt and that scrubby and scrub the heck out of it. Because like when I got this pan, there was like a piece of bread stuck on it still from I don't know how long. So I scrubbed the heck out of it, all of the sides, the back, the front. And there's a very big debate. Can you use soap on a cast iron pan? I personally like to use soap on it because I just feel better that I'm cleaning it with soap, but some people don't. And once you get it nice and clean, the most important thing to prevent these guys from rusting is you want to dry it. So just take like a clean dishcloth and just dry it. And then if it's your first time using this after you bought it from a person, what I would say is put a little bit of oil. And again, you want to just use that neutral oil. So vegetable oil, canola oil, whatever it may be, and put a thin layer and rub it in. If you have any excess, if you put too much, just take paper towel and kind of wipe it. And then the first time you want to just put it into like a really hot oven. I can't remember the temperature, but if you like Google it, it's probably like 400, 450 even. And you put it upside down in your oven rack and just put a pan underneath so that any kind of excess oil will drip. And you bake it really for like an hour or so. The idea is to create this really nice coating so that it becomes non-stick pretty much. So you can do this for all of your pans. If you're buying a brand new pan, you don't even need to do that. They do that for you already. Just give it a good wash once you get home with a little bit of soap and water. And then the whole process becomes really, really easy. So say this guy, after dinner, I scoop out all of the curry out of it. then what I'll do is I'll just wash it with some hot soapy water. I don't need to go crazy and scrub because we created this beautiful layer on the bottom. It's not going to stick anymore. Just do some hot soapy water. And what I'll do is I'll dry it right away again to prevent the rusting. A little bit of oil, paper towel, rub it in, and then we're good for the next use. So it becomes, the process doesn't become very tedious and it's very easy. The only time you need to put it in the oven and reseal it again is if, say, you by accident burnt something on it and then something became stuck again, and then you need to really scrub it again. Because once you scrub it really, really hard, what happens is that you'll strip away that coating that you created, and that's when you need to recoat it again.
Okay, so the coating is essentially just the oil that the neutral oil. Wow.
Yeah. And every time you cook and you put that new layer of oil in, it creates this, it continues to create this beautiful layer of oil upon oil upon oil. And it just like slides. Like this is seasoned to the point where if you heat it up and you crack an sunny side up egg in here, you can swirl it around and it won't stick. So you want it eventually get to this point. It takes a little bit of time to get there.
Wow, that's amazing. We have another question in the chat. Leslie, do you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you so much for the recipe and for all wonderful tips. I had to step away for a moment and I missed the lemongrass part, and I've never used lemongrass before. Can you just tell me what you did with the lemongrass, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the lemongrass, I don't have one here right now because it's in here now, but it's just like a long, it kind of almost looks like a plant stem and stalk. So when you get it from the grocery store, usually it's a little bit dry and crispy. So we'll just pretend this is the stalk. And what I do is I just put it onto my cutting board and I use the back of my knife to just hit it a couple of times so that it breaks apart the membrane of the stalk and it releases that beautiful lemongrass flavor. And then if you're using your food processor or blender to make the paste, you can just stick that stalk right in and then it'll blend it up. Not all of it will get blended up fully, like you'll probably still see bits, pieces of your lemongrass afterwards. And you can take that out if it's too chewy, but the flavor will be there once you kind of hit it a couple of times and break it apart.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you so much for that. I have to tell you also your tip about peeling carrots with the tinfoil is unbelievable. I can't tell you how many times I've been at Christmas dinner at someone else's house and there isn't a carrot peeler and we just forgo the carrots. So that's amazing that you said that. And we just really appreciate the tips. If you could, just before we leave, give us one last tip on, you told us how to preserve the dish, the veggie dish. Now, how would we, if we had extra paste, what would we do with the paste?
Yeah, so if you have extra paste and you know that you want to use it, within the next 3 months, I would say, put it into a clean glass jar, and just make sure you close it really, really tight and put like a little sticker or label on it saying Red Thai chili paste. And it will be in your fridge okay for like 3 months or so. If you don't want to use it in the next few months and maybe you want to use it again in the summertime and you know this ahead of time, again, I would take your ice cube trays or even just like a small container like this that you might have kicking around, or even like muffin tins, like the disposable muffin tins, pour it into those. And I like to say like pour it into something small because when you defrost something, you might not want to defrost the whole batch. Maybe you want to just defrost a little bit of it for one meal. So if you can portion it up into smaller sizes, that's better. So ice cube tray is perfect. They now have ice cube trays with like a bigger size. It's not like a tiny ice cube. It's like a bigger ice cube tray. So if you end up meal prepping quite a bit and you freeze a lot of stuff, it might be good to invest in something like that. But freeze it. And then when you freeze anything in ice cube tray, you want to just make sure that it's frozen. And then once it's frozen, you still want to transfer it into a Ziploc bag like this, or one of those reusable Ziploc bags, because as we all know, with time, there's going to be freezer burn on your ice cube tray, and you don't want that on the food that you're consuming. So once you freeze that, dump it into a Ziploc bag, label it, always label it so you know what it is. And then when it comes time and you need 1 or 2 cubes for the dish tonight, you can just simply open the bag, take out 2 cubes, and you don't even need to defrost it because the heat of your pan will melt and everything in like 2 seconds. And then you can just continue to cook and break it apart in the pan.
Well, that's great. And I also, I want to just give a shout out to everyone who is taking part in the 12 Days of Creativity, which is a big event that we had for the last 12 days of December. And in that, we were really promoting our Creative Bug database that the library offers to the public. And you can learn about preserving through Creative Bug. So if you did want to preserve the paste, I'm sure you could learn and follow along with the Creative Bug program. But Joyce, we want to thank you so much for this meeting tonight. It was so informative and so lovely, and this dish is appropriate for this time of year. So thank you so very much, and we hope to see you again helping us out with a similar program at Brampton Library in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great night.
Bye for now, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.